Environment meeting to order. And Ms. Amanda, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Slanka?
Here.
Mr. Richmond?
Here.
Ms. Sibsey?
Here.
Ms. Baggett?
Here.
Dr. Zollett?
Here.
Ms. Lawley?
Here.
Mr. Bonnell?
Here.
Ms. Miller?
Do we have to, excuse, is everybody here?
Everybody's here.
Everybody's here. Yay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And, looks like we don't have anybody here for citizen comments, so we'll go ahead and go past that as well. Next item on our agenda this morning is the approval of the June 2025 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Any changes that would like to be made? Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. Please call the roll.
Mr. Richmond?
Yes.
Ms. Sibsey?
Yes.
Ms. Baggett?
Yes.
Dr. Zollett?
Yes.
Ms. Lawley?
Yes.
Mr. Bonnell?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the motion passes. The next item on our agenda is to receive and file the financial report for June of 2025. Is there a motion, please, to approve the financial report? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about the financial report from June?
I just need, Chandra, I think the FEP grant, we were waiting to hear about the FEP grant. FEP is Public Health Emergency Program, and we're thinking that we will receive all the 28% that it has been reduced, is that correct? So,
Yes, it's being reduced. From what I've heard so far, it's gonna be a 28% reduction across the state. We do not know what our numbers look like as of yet. That's still being figured out on Butler County's side. But yes, there will be a reduction.
but other than that, the finances are right on track, so. And this would affect us, the next grant period year is usually July 1st through June 30th, 2026.
All right, thank you very much for that. Is there any other comments? Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Powell, please call the roll.
Mr. Richmond?
Yes.
Ms. Sibsey?
Yes.
Ms. Baggett?
Yes.
Dr. Zollett?
Yes.
Ms. Lawley?
Yes.
Mr. Bonnell?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on our agenda today is our education presentation. Are we
We'll
good?
do that. Yes.
Are we good? Okay, Dr. Dunaway, please take it away.
Okay.
Yeah, I just need to run down somewhere. I told Amanda I'd do it so she can do your stuff.
So July is Diabetes Awareness Month, Diabetes Mellitus. That's all, the meaning is to pass through or honey. So diabetes mellitus, it's a metabolic disorder of the body characterized by high blood sugar levels over a chronic period of time. So a one-time high sugar, for whatever reason, doesn't give you a diagnosis of diabetes. It's a prolonged illness. There's records of it dating back to 1500 BC, and even as far back as 400 BC, physicians were noting what they called the honey urine, which was urine that attracted ants after people urinated. So they knew something was wrong with why the urine of certain people were so much different than others. They know, and even then, around the 400 BC, they noted two types: young people and overweight people. So even in 400 BC, there was some obese people apparently. Go ahead, next one.
I'm trying.
No, sorry, we went two there. So
Struggling here.
That's all right, that's all right. Prevalence worldwide is 463 million people, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around, but in the United States, there's estimates of about 34 million people with diabetes. 7.3 million of those are what they consider undiagnosed. So people have it, their sugars aren't normal, they just don't have any significant symptoms, and they haven't been to the doctor, and they're walking around not even knowing that they have problems with sugar metabolism. We have 1.5 million new cases diagnosed annually in the United States. We have 88 million people who are what's commonly termed pre-diabetes. So you combine those two in a country of about 350 million people, we have about 120 million, about 1 in 3, that have some sort of sugar metabolism issue, much of which is linked to obesity. The diagnosis is pretty straightforward. It's a laboratory blood test. You can either do it through a blood draw through the vein, or you can even do it now with simple finger sticks, everybody knows. Typically it's considered any fasting blood sugar that's greater than 126. or a glucose tolerance test, which is where you drink a bottle of sugar water, and then 2 hours after, sugar's still above 200. That's a second way to diagnose. Third is if your hemoglobin A1C, which is a blood test for kind of looking at a 90-day average of what that sugar is running. If that A1C is over 6.5, that's a third confirmation of diabetes. Any one of those three would diagnose you as diabetes. Symptoms, again, much of the time it's you don't have any symptoms. You feel pretty good, nothing really seems too wrong. You maybe have a little bit of frequent urination because you're peeing out more sugar, which is making your water chases the sugar. And so you have frequent urination, you might get a little more thirsty, and some people get an increased appetite. Those are pretty vague, nondescript, doesn't really attract a lot of attention, and thus we have a lot of people who don't know they even have issues. Essentially, there's two types of diabetes. There's really three we'll get into a little bit, but typically it's considered two types. One is type 1 diabetes, which is where the pancreas has certain cells that are called beta cells that they produce our insulin. And for whatever reason that has really never been discovered as of yet, there's an autoimmune response that seems to attack these beta cells and kill them. The destruction of those cells leads to a lack of insulin. This is usually the childhood version of type 1 diabetes because they just don't have any insulin. They have really the only way to manage these kids usually is with insulin. There is now becoming a newer version of the adult onset type 1, which is a similar mechanism, just later in life, which again, we still don't really understand the whys and hows. It's kind of being abbreviated as type 1.5 diabetes because it is still destruction of the beta cells and a lack of insulin, but much later in life than the typical 5 to 10-year-old child. Also commonly called as insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus because you're dependent on insulin, or juvenile diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is what most of us experience with friends and family. It is adult onset. Obviously there it's 90% of all diabetes cases. Begins with insulin resistance, which is tied to obesity. And eventually some people do progress to a lack of insulin, but the major instigating factor is that our body just does not respond to the insulin as efficiently as it used to and as it should. And again, as the bottom, excess body weight is the number one factor. Obesity just makes our body more resistant to the insulin. Lack of exercise ties into all of that. Gestational diabetes is kind of a side one that is much less common, but is still prevalent. This is only in pregnant women who have not had a prior diagnosis of diabetes before becoming pregnant. So it's standard for all pregnancies when they go and get prenatal care that they'll get a glucose challenge test to determine if they have any metabolic issues with sugar management. Usually it resolves after the pregnancy and things get back to pretty much normal for them, but they do carry an increased risk of developing type 2 later on. Again, oftentimes associated with being overweight, but not always. Complications is the big thing of why diabetes is such a critical thing in our healthcare system today. We're getting so much volume of patients, but why does that really matter to these complications? So acute complications can be very life-threatening and severe, particularly in the type 1 diabetes syndrome. You get diabetic ketoacidosis. So in type 1 diabetes, if they do not have the insulin, your blood sugar is going to increase dramatically, but your body can't use it. So you're not absorbing the sugar into the muscles to use it for energy because you don't have the insulin to do it. So your body actually starts to burn fatty acids for energy instead of glucose. As a result of that metabolic system, it produces acidic ketone bodies, and those are very damaging. So that's a very dangerous situation when you get into ketosis and can be life-threatening, seizures, coma, and even death. And it happens pretty rapidly. Usually there's another illness, they're sick with something else, they're throwing up, they get dehydrated, and it sends them all into the spiral of problems that rapidly deteriorates and is life-threatening. In type 2 diabetics, you get hyperosmolar hypoglycemic state. So here they do have enough insulin to keep them out of that ketotic state, but their sugars are getting very high because it's not enough, and they're not managing it well enough. So it's usually, again, tied to an illness. They get dehydrated, they have nausea, vomiting. It's a slower process. It's not quite as rapid, but it can be every bit as serious. So it still leads to seizures. Rhabdomyolysis is destruction of muscle, fibers and tissue, and clotting issues. So it still can be life-threatening, but typically not, because it's not as acute, it's typically not as severe as ketosis. The chronic complications are the big deal. So you get all these people running around not knowing they're diabetic, or knowing they're not diabetic and they're still not exercising, they're still not managing it well, they're not eating properly, and they have high blood sugars as a chronic process. They get into problems with, over the 10 to 20 years of having those high sugars, because again, they may not have much symptoms, so a lot of them tend not to go to the doctor, they don't take it very serious, they want to have that cake and pie and bread and do all those things, but inside that sugar is kind of eating them up from the inside out. And the biggest thing that occurs is damage to the blood vessel walls. This puts everybody, all those diabetics who are not well controlled, at risk for heart attack, stroke, and peripheral vascular disease in the legs. This is what they refer to as macrovascular, so big arteries typically considered, but leads to major problems with death, disability, and amputations. With the peripheral vascular disease, you get wounds on the feet and the legs, they don't heal well, the infection gets into the bone, and you just can't clear it, so you wind up getting toes and feet and legs amputated. The heart attack and stroke are obvious problems and serious increases in numbers. But then you get into microvascular, which are much smaller arteries, and there you get into destruction of the eyes, the retinas, vision loss, kidney damage, winding up on dialysis, and nerve damage, giving you diabetic neuropathy. So blindness, dialysis, and diabetic neuropathy. So it really is a pretty long road, but it's a rough road. It's bad. I mean, when you see people, and the problem I try to always emphasize with patients is, once you start seeing these problems, there's no putting the wheel back on the car. You're in a bad place, and we might be able to slow some things down from getting worse, but by the time you're here, there's a lot less we can do for you. It's about preventing it that 10 and 20 years later and keeping those sugars controlled so that you don't get to this point that really matters. So many people finally wake up when they're starting to have these problems, and you hate to see that, because it's I hate to say it's too late, but it's kind of too late. So in 1998, there was kind of a massive study that really kind of changed a lot of the thinking and how aggressive we had to be. It was in our journal, The Lancet. It was kind of the blockbuster study that looked at where should that A1C be. When we're measuring people, you can do spot sugars or glucose all day long, but you really don't know how the overall management is. And it's a combination of those sugars, daily sugars, but also that A1C, of looking at what that 90-day kind of average is. And that study showed that if you got those people below 7, it dramatically reduced that 10-year risk for complications. 10 years later, they followed up with 10 years later they followed up with another study that was in the New England Journal of Medicine that corroborated that study and actually saw even better outcomes at 6.5. So for the average diabetic, the goal really has been to have that A1C below 6.5, even though normal is below 5.7 for a non-diabetic. If a diabetic gets and keeps their A1C below 6.5, they dramatically reduce the risk of those 10-year complications by being in that lower age group. Gets a little more complicated if you're over 65 because we're worried about hypoglycemia, but as a general rule, we look for 6.5. So treatment, as we said, with type 1, the hallmark of treatment is insulin. They have no insulin, so you have to give insulin. And that's a pretty complex situation nowadays. There's a lot of new insulins, a lot of variations. There are pumps that give it slowly and continuously. And that's really kind of the hallmark treatment for a lot of these kids as they get into their teens. You can manage it a little bit better to give them continuous insulin. And now the newer meters are linking to the pumps, and they're talking back and forth, so that if the insulin or the sugar levels start to drop, the pump can back off on what it's delivering, and if it goes up, it can add. It's pretty phenomenal treatment with these insulin pumps and how we're delivering management type 1 diabetics. But nutrition and exercise is also a hallmark. You know, these kids and adults have to eat well, they have to eat properly, they have to keep kind of a relatively constant amount of carb load so they don't get too big a burst, and also be exercising so they burn that glucose off. Type 2 diabetes, early management really is to get after the weight. You know, I've seen many patients who have elevated A1Cs later in life and they lose 40 pounds and their A1C is normal. A lot of data out there for putting them on metformin and things early on, but you know, that's one thing that has certainly become a newer phenomenon to me in the last 5 to 10 years is how medication averse patients are. You can kind of use that against them if you want to say that you know, if you don't want to be on a pill, you got to lose the weight. You got to eat right, you got to exercise and get that 40 pounds off, and I'd be okay with not being on metformin, but it doesn't work as often as I'd like. So then you add in oral medications like metformin. There's several new pills. Really, again, the breadth of options is pretty phenomenal nowadays. Well tolerated typically. And lastly, you get into insulin for these patients too, because again, they can start to sputter on their insulin production, or their management can just be poorly controlled enough that they need to add insulin. And then you get into the whole GLP-1s, which are injectable medications that are simpler and less intrusive maybe than insulin in someone's daily routine, that have also kind of been a game changer for reducing cardiac risk, reducing obesity, and it's kind of changing the face of treatment of type 2 diabetes. Very expensive. Insurance companies tend not to like it. A lot of hurdles to jump over to get those approved, but it's really changed the game. So breaking it down a little further by numbers, and again, as an internist, seeing the majority of my patients are on Medicare. 14.3 million patients with diabetes on Medicare. And you know, there was kind of that bubble in time when all of our greatest medications went generic. It was kind of a fun time to practice medicine because it was the best medicines out there were fairly inexpensive again, and made it pretty easy. But now we've got all these new blockbuster medications that are really changing the face of everything, that are terribly expensive. And the continuous glucose monitors, and you know, preventing hypoglycemia, and it's also kind of a fun time to practice because of all these changes. But it's incredibly difficult to get it approved. It's terribly draining on Medicare in particular, because when you're looking at these numbers and how expensive these devices and these medications are, it's kind of mind-boggling. But you know, the goal is, if 20 years later they're not getting amputations and on dialysis, you know, you've saved money over what those costs are going to become. So you got 27% of people over 65 are diabetic. It's pretty huge. 1 in 4 Medicare patients are diabetic. And again, most all of them are related to obesity. $237 billion spent on healthcare. Billion. $237 billion. I mean, that's phenomenal on one disease process. 14% of all dollars spent in the U.S. on healthcare. And it's the 7th leading cause of death. And in reality, you know, when you think about that, it contributes to so many other things. Because so many people get myocardial infarction, arrhythmia, put on the death certificate, and you know, somewhere down on the bottom it may be a contributing factor or just left off, but you know, many of those heart attacks, strokes, and those things are, or even pneumonia. You know, it's a factor of a weakened immune system that really is probably led to by diabetes. So it probably really should be higher on the list than that even, but that's kind of a direct cause. Any questions?
That $1 billion, does that include all ages?
That does,
Like
but it is direct
juvenile?
cost too. It
Okay.
is all ages, but it's direct cost. So saying what we were just talking about earlier, the MI, the heart attack in the 70-year-old patient, I don't know that includes that, who's a diabetic
Right, gotcha.
for 8 years and
So
didn't
there's a lot
control
of,
it.
that could be missing.
Oh,
from
yeah,
the total.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And-
Do you know how much money goes into
I don't.
Probably
That would be
none.
good.
Zero.
It's not zero, but I'm sure it's a
Yeah.
fraction of that,
Prevention
yes.
is so,
Yes.
this is what, I got
That
high
number's
blood
just
pressure,
gonna
right,
increase.
watching this
That
side.
number is going
Oh.
to-
Yes, I got high blood
Those,
pressure.
all those numbers
Yeah,
are
but that doesn't,
exponentially
that's
increased.
baloney. Everybody knows about diabetes and everybody's walking around fat and everybody is eating whatever they see. Come on, anybody with 2 brain cells knows
Right,
what
but-
causes
I think you make a very valid statement.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
that's,
come on, and have some, you
Yeah,
have to have
they
some
may
of your
not know the
own.
details and all that, but they
Good
know the
debate,
basic
good
gist
debate.
is
Come
that
on.
if I am
Good
obese,
debate.
I'm gonna get diabetes and it's probably
More
gonna
than
kill me.
likely, and look what I'm eating, yeah, I'm a diabetic,
there's-
and then they're over at the, donut shop
Well-
having, donuts.
There's some areas that have food insecurities and their only
Okay,
options are junk.
that's fair.
Yeah.
right,
And
and
actually,
food is,
That's fair, but-
and healthy food is expensive.
Yeah.
Culturally speaking, African Americans,
Bad food is
Hispanics,
expensive.
everybody has had lower grade food that had to use a lot of salt, fat. I mean, you have to look
We
at.
can make
how-
excuses all day long.
It's not excuses.
Those are excuses.
Those are variables.
There's, we see kids making wrong choices, we see a lot of pop. Why do we have
Hold on a
SNAP
second,
paying
we
for
can't
things
hear,
that they should
we
be
can't
paying
hear
for?
everybody.
The fact that we allow access to things that are
I'm saying that the
terrible
whole
for us.
system, this is a good debate for
Across
health,
the
because it's
problem.
prevention, right? For public health, it's a good debate. I think all of the above is true.
Yeah, there's no
But you
wrong.
have to have a solution to get around all of it. You can keep blaming people and say, don't eat, and the food is bad, but we know that it is part of the plan to get you hooked on salt, sugar, or whatever. There's too many studies out there that shows that certain foods are addictive.
If you're gonna
And so-
let the town have 40 or 67 vape shops, and you're gonna do all this
I
other
agree with you
stuff,
there.
and then you're gonna tell me that they don't, that you're gonna do the thing with the food, I mean, come on.
Although,
Everybody's doing what
can
they
I say
shouldn't do
something?
anyway.
Can I say something really quickly though? I am always, sadly, negatively impressed, like shocked, by how little people actually do know about health. We are accustomed to this conversation because this is what we do, but when you go out and talk to the regular person, they actually don't really understand, how, because food is no longer really food anymore. It's not healthful unless you're buying whole foods. Otherwise, people still think that, the mayonnaise they had when they were kids is the same as today, and it's just not. The things that we bought are not the same. The ingredients are different. So I think there is a lot to be said for education. It is necessary. People don't know as much as we think, especially young kids. So it's a huge problem, but what can we do about education?
And I think it's cheaper, right, to do prevention, but I tell you
I'm
what,
sure.
people eat for different reasons. People do not eat because they're hungry. They are traumatized, they are stressed, I know myself that I feel better if I've had a hard week, I feel better to eat a pizza. I'm just telling you, I do. And it's wrong, I know my doctor tells me all the time, but I know better, but that's stressful too, right? And so I think if we started earlier and do all the cheaper, inexpensive stuff, get the kids out, there's no more gym. And you guys gotta admit, exercise and everything has changed. We used to walk places, bike places, we used to go inside a bank instead of drive-through, inside a restaurant instead of drive-through, inside a post office instead of drive-through. Think about all the ways we do not increase our activity now, just through convenience. So all those little things, I think, ends up being, I'm just saying, there are all those little
I'm
things.
not, I think you're right, it's all the above, but I mean, people have to take responsibility. And I understand maybe they don't know as much about it, but common sense tells you, when you walk into a place and you see that 60% of the people, they're not just a little bit overweight, they're grossly obese. You have to figure somehow in that brain, I don't care how stupid you are, that there's a problem here between, cause and effect. And you have to take some responsibility as the individual. And I mean, a lot of people know that. They come into your office, I used to tell them, I'd say, you've gotta lose weight, you've gotta exercise. Yeah, okay, doc, I'm gonna do it. And they come back, 6 months later, hell, they look exactly the same, they haven't done anything. Maybe 1 out of 10 took your advice and everything. And I used to say, my major comment was, you can do this when you're 20 and 30. You can maybe do it when you're 40. but that 50 and 60 is gonna come in a hurry, and all these things that you have done that are no good are gonna get you. And so at least anybody that came through my office, even if they didn't know, they knew when they walked out, because we had the and we'd only had it not only once, but we had it every time they came in the office.
That's good. People, not as many doctors are actually talking about that. I mean, and it's
Well,
hard.
maybe it's not like that today, I don't know, but it used to be in the old days.
Yeah, then
and-
not as many are talking about that. They mention it probably, but if it were that easy, then none of us would have any issues. If we could all overcome everything.
It's not easy, it's very
No, it
hard,
is.
that's the
But-
problem. They
but-
know what to do, but you can't
Yeah.
do it because it's so difficult.
It's very complex, it's connected to so many things, so I like the
That's the
idea,
issue.
it is, it's so interconnected with our lives and our you know, all these things that go on, and just boredom sometimes, but, I think that's why the early education, talking about, like you just said, when you're 50 and 60, it's a lot hard, and beyond, it's harder.
It's already done.
So try to get good habits beforehand. So what are the things that the health board can actually do? We have our fair coming up. We can talk about what you just said. It gets more difficult when you're older, so start now. And even though you see all your friends doing whatever, don't do it yourself, right?
Right, and most of your patients are coming in at 40 and 50. We gotta get people into healthcare earlier and start it earlier from all of that, and so that they can see, because it's so much, I mean, you know how kids get excited when it's candy and chips or whatever, because it's just so good, and because, so we gotta get into the fruits, the vegetables or whatever, and the balance, but I'm telling you, if you don't have households working all 24/7 around the clock, and parents wanna go and it's complicated, parents wanna get food really quick or whatever, it's about convenience, it's about overworked, it's about routines, everybody's kids are in a lot of different select things or whatever, so it's all ages, and then they're doing it, but if you think about it, it's bulimia, is anorexia, it's different issues around food, but it's addiction too, you guys, it's in that brain. And so, I mean, again, we have to talk about all of it. Why do people drink knowing that why do people smoke knowing that, lung and emphysema? Why do people, do drugs? And so I think it's all about a healthier lifestyle holistically, starting young with families, playing and stuff like we used to do. I think it was by osmosis that we were healthier young, because we didn't have TVs, computers, and we were outside in the sun. That was by accident, that wasn't because we were smart.
We live in a world of like instant gratification too.
Yes.
It's like, I'm hungry, I'm going to make this highly processed pasta instead of making homemade pasta.
Right.
I watched a video last night of a 103-year-old Italian woman making her own pasta. And I'm like, this is like a whole day, all day process. But it was way better for you.
Yeah.
And that's why she's 103.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and people don't think it'll happen to them
Yeah.
until it happens to them.
Till they have to, right.
So,
I like that conversation too, because sometimes talking to young kids, they'll say, kids will say, yeah, but I'm healthy, I'm playing basketball,
Yeah.
like, look at my body, I'm so fit, but they're drinking like Mountain Dew for breakfast, and weird Red Bulls, and all these weird things. But I'm fit now, so it's okay. So maybe having that conversation at the health fair, it's like, you look like this, but internally, this is what's going on.
Right, because there's like skinny fat,
Yeah.
right? Where they're,
Yeah.
Right.
they're
And I
not
had no
healthy, they may
symptoms.
look it, but.
Yeah, what?
I had no symptoms. I
Mhm.
got diagnosed last year.
Yeah,
Oh.
see?
So, but I was gestational and saw Dr. Steiner and did all the right things, had a safe delivery, and my A1C was 11.
Wow.
Wow.
See?
And I had no symptoms at all.
Wow.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying I'm not overweight, because I certainly
Right.
am, but you don't think it'll happen to you
Right.
until it happens to you.
And to get older, I always wanna see, I don't know if Dr. Geneline or Dr. Zollett has talked to pediatricians and know what younger kids are seeing in their type 2 diabetes and their cholesterol or whatever, you know what I mean, just to see if that's going up in that age. How many kids that we're not testing? I guarantee you, 18 to 30 are probably not getting their blood work done. And how many people are already at high number, what are those statistics? You know what I mean, where are those baselines? Because I tell you, I beg and plead for young people, I said, please come out and get your baselines. But you're not going to the doctor, men especially are not going to the doctor between 18 and 50.
One of the-
18 to 45.
I don't even
think-
know, because I've never dealt with kids, but I don't even know, do they pay for lab like that for
I think they do.
Do they?
Yeah.
Cause I don't know.
See, I'm wondering.
Once a year screening stuff, yeah.
Okay, okay.
One thing that I also think is important, because especially when we're kids, when we're young, and we see like some of the exercise videos and they show like these easy stretches.
Right.
It looks so funny, but that consistency over time is so important.
Mhm.
So maybe during the health fair as well, like talking about eating your vegetables, talking about stretching every day, getting fresh air every day. These are the things that keep you healthy consistently. Perhaps like going on that walk every day, just to try to build that consistency. Even though you look healthy and you feel healthy, these are how you stay healthy. Perhaps
Yeah.
that's a conversation.
Well, and it's about putting the work in.
Mhm.
It is a
It is.
full-time job to
It is.
manage your lab work, your diet, your exercise, your full-time
Absolutely.
job, your school, your kids, your
Mhm.
life.
Your job.
And
Wow,
it's
that's
easier to
wow.
be non-compliant than it is
It's
compliant.
easier,
Sure.
yeah.
And additionally, no offense to the doctors in the room,
Uh,
but I don't think med school teaches nutrition the way it should. And maybe when you guys were in school it was different, but that's what I hear from the younger.
I was gonna say, they didn't teach it when I was in school, but I mean, that's a.
Basic
It's like,
levels,
it's like a
basic levels.
semester or something like that.
Right,
And,
and it's so
They don't do
important.
it for nurses either.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so that's a problem.
That's interesting.
Because
Why?
like, how are you supposed to teach patients if, and do you even have the time nowadays?
But I am gonna play
But-
devil's advocate again. I think public health has a tendency to try to give excuses and explain away why it's not your fault. Everybody knows chicken's better than hamburger. And again, that's a little bit common sense, a little bit, maybe a little too glossing over, but
Baked chicken.
everybody knows you shouldn't fry your food, you should bake it.
Mm.
But still, too many people don't go out and get chicken and fish, they go out and get hamburger because it tastes better, they wanna get the lean hamburger because it's not as juicy, so they get the worst hamburger, partly because it's cheaper, but partly because it tastes better. You know, I get way, you know, my biggest criticism in my office is I get too far behind. And I'll spend 20 minutes talking to somebody about nutrition, go through their whole diet with them for, you know, the last 3 weeks, and they'll tell me how they ate chicken and brown rice,
Yeah.
and they're 350 pounds, and I'm like, you know, I don't know how to help you then. If you're gonna come in here and not be truthful with me, and they'll come in 2 years later down 50 pounds, I'll say, how do you do it? How'd you do it? Well, they quit drinking the 12-pack of Pepsi every day. You forgot to tell me that in the 20 minutes we talked about your whole diet, you forgot the 12-pack of Pepsi you have every day?
The worst
So-
thing I
so-
see ever that just drives me crazy is those ads on TV for Mountain Dew. That's
I'm
a
telling
that's
you,
a
it's a
thing
conspiracy.
that
You
should
can-
never.
You can say that we're.
That shouldn't even be made. That
People
is-
know what they should and shouldn't do
Oh,
within
yeah.
a certain
Within
degree.
yeah.
Now,
I
if you
got
get into
nuts when I
processed
see
foods and
that.
all those
That's
things.
the biggest
I've got a
offender.
90-year-old patient 96-year-old patient who's still smoking. So, you know, we can point out these people who are the exception to the rule, but, you know, most people know the basics of nutrition, what they should and shouldn't be doing. Even when they go out to eat, you can make better choices.
You know, one of the things
And,
that.
and so, when we purposely don't make those choices, it doesn't help to make excuses.
No, one of the things that, that we look at, I think with the health board especially, when it comes to education, is kind of like, how can we plant seeds, right? How can we help
Right.
people, because it's consistency, we learn through repetition, we learn like sports that way, we also learn school that way. It's repetition, so when, with the health fair coming up, and also the idea I was telling you about what we could do with gardens, I'm hoping to put together a meeting with people who are interested in gardening and what might be possible for Middletown, just because, it's connected to health, right? When you have your own food, you made it yourself, even if it's just like sprouts in your kitchen that don't need light, like that's something that you can eat that's healthful, and it literally plants seeds for future health. But it is a complicated discussion. I'm glad we're having it, and I'm really looking forward to the health fair. What kinds of things are we gonna have at the health fair talking about? Consistent health,
That would be Ruth and Chandra, they've
Yeah.
been working hard.
working hard. Do you have anything with that, or is that something? Yeah, we're gonna hear about that later. Excellent. When is the health fair as well? Let's say it right now again.
September 27th.
September 27th
from-
at,
At the Middletown Event Center at 3907 Central,
okay,
from 10 to 2.
10 to 2. Okay, so that's good to know. All right, so if we can continue, will that work? Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Dr. Genowine, that was good. Yeah, it's important. It's a lot.
No excuses, that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, it's true, and we're all in our
Well,
lives.
and information's at your fingertips these days too, so you shouldn't rely on your doctor all the time for all
Correct.
the information.
It's one way. It's nice when they say it, and
Yeah.
it's everything else. Okay, I do have to, just to let you know, I do have to leave at 8:30, a hard leave at 8:30,
Okay.
but the meeting can progress, of course. So our next item on the agenda is new business, so we're looking at travel authorizations, we have none.
None?
So we're good there. Next item after that is review of the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund Assistant Agreement. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Ms.
Carla,
Wilker?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this is the last part of, the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, getting us, ready to start our new program.
Mhm.
This was the last part, so they accepted everything that we, submitted. Now, after this, they said that we can start, accepting applications for septic systems that have failed, or, if some have failed and need repair or replacing, or if someone needs to connect to the city sewer and they meet the guidelines. So, and the only thing we have to wait, like, we can't accept bids, we can take the applications, but we can't, accept bids yet because, the funds haven't been encumbered, so hopefully by the end of July, the funds will
So
have
what
been
happens
encumbered.
is that if they need a septic replaced, then you
They
have
can-
money to help them pay for it if they can't.
Yes, if they
Yes.
meet
For
the
it.
guidelines, yep.
That's what's, and in the packet, it's a real quick step one and the step through that we had in, giving credit to Middletown Connect, the mayor, the city manager, Carla and I, we worked hard to get to this process, and we look forward to going through the first one to see how, if we need any critiquing and whatever, but it's exciting because you find out if something's failing, and then you do the application, and then you go through and it should be step by step by step. And it's just these 2 pages, and
Yeah, Indiana
yeah.
Shores.
Does anybody need an extra copy of these, just in case it's in the packet, because we have extra? You have, you passed them out too? Okay, you guys got them there too.
So this is the, like, kinda like the flow chart of how this can go.
Mhm.
Yeah, Indiana Shores from Middletown Connected, a
Yes.
lot of work on this as well. Wanted to
And
thank-
the amount is $150, $150,000 we have, so.
Yeah, and we're gonna be monitoring that this year to see how it goes.
Question, cause Amy, okay, cause you're looking like, what? Yeah, okay. And also, we were told that we may be able to get funding from other places, so we're gonna keep working hard to make sure that people that need the assistance can get the assistance, and so we're excited about that, and that way the health board will not have to put anybody out of their home, hopefully.
Yeah.
That was the real goal.
Any other questions about this or comments about the loan agreement? No, all right, we will continue then. So then we have the review of proposed environmental fees for 2025-2026.
So the fees, if you look at the report, I have the current fees, the new recommended fees, and just showing you what the maximum fee we could charge based on the cost analysis. Pretty much everything, the maximum fees were increased. However, we're not gonna do an increase, on the food fees, vending, mobiles, the temporaries, and the pools, and the body art, and the campground. So we're not really looking at increasing those fees. I think last year we had, it wasn't a consistent, the program wasn't consistent as far as who was in the program. I think I worked a lot in the program, and, we had was Sarah here last year? Sarah. So we had actually 4 people working in the program, so since it wasn't consistent, the fees probably could have increased, so Jackie and I decided not to, recommend an increase, even though we're a little bit lower than we wanna be on the fees, and then we did increase the fees, last year. So possibly looking if they increase next year, maybe we'll do an increase. With the water and, private water and sewer fees, there is an increase. And basically what, the increase is, when you have new wells or you alter wells, you have to have a, water sample. So what we did was included the water sample in those fees. So right now, if we would actually, lose money because we would have to pay for those, water samples, so we actually put them in the proposed fee. If there's a homeowner that needs a water sample, there's a different fee for that as well. Also for the septic, We did not have a 12-month inspection, so we added that in the fee as well. So that's on the second page. So there is an increase on the water and the sewer fees.
I wanted to say, it says purpose fee, I think it should say proposed fee, correct?
This one
For,
is,
for both of those, on the water and maintenance sewer. And the column,
Up here, the column
where it
with
says
the
current
top.
fee, and then
Oh.
in both.
Oh,
in both,
thanks,
yeah.
thank you.
I was like, okay, so proposed fee up there
Proposed, uh-huh.
for all the way down as well, continuing. So, some of these are pretty significant.
Yeah.
Like, so for example, the site review application, that's like pretty much,
Well, this, where is it?
that's the third one down in the first, chart.
The site.
Last page.
Yeah, third one down at the top. There we go.
We have not increased that fee since I've been here.
Oh.
So, yeah.
And how long have you been here?
Yeah, so, now, when I make the fees too, when I adjust the fees, I look at what everybody else is charging, so. And usually that encompasses us to looking at the site review, going out, looking at a lot, when they apply to put in a septic system, so it could take, a little bit of time, so I wanted to just increase that a little bit. But it hasn't been increased since I've been here, so, since I've been working, so I wanted to do an adjustment.
So you
That's
looked,
compatible.
you looked at all of for all of these, you looked at what's comparable?
Yeah, for Butler and Hamilton.
So the new proposed fees would be more consistent?
Yes.
And
yes.
also be able to,
Cover
incorporate.
some costs.
Mhm,
Yeah.
the costs.
And I talked to, well, Nicole is the one that, she does the water, some of the water, she does some of the sewer and the water, and we've talked about some of the adjustments and how much time is spent, so that's where those come from. But for the water ones, it's mostly from the water samples. It went up to 100, because the water samples are about $100.
Cause like, for example, the last one on the list, the water survey for real estate closing, including water, so it went from 100 to 300. Is that because of the $100 water sample?
Because,
And then the not having been increased before?
right, correct,
In 25 years?
correct.
And they're not done often.
And they're not
These are-
done that
Yeah, these are not
often.
done, these are,
I have not done a survey since I've been here for a water survey.
Okay,
they're just
wow.
not done.
But the
yeah.
water samples run over $100.
Okay.
And then there's a sewer one, the HSTS influence sample, it's $65 plus lab costs. The lab cost is about $400. So I don't wanna, we haven't done one of those yet, but some of the water samples we have, and we had to pay for it, we lost money on. So this one, that's where I put lab costs.
Yeah.
Because we never know how much the lab's gonna, be on those, so we wanted to make sure we don't eat that cost.
And potentially losing some funding as well,
Yeah.
so, yeah, we have to really consider basically passing it on, unfortunately. Okay. Any other questions or comments about the?
I was gonna say, for Mrs. Baggett, I think is probably the one, we do these fees, Carla brings fees to the board every year to review. It's either increase or no increase, but any fees that we charge in the health department has to be approved by the Board of Health. And so that's why we bring you the fees to you, so that you can look at it and question. Sometimes we have it on the agenda, so that's when you get guests in, to
Mhm.
say, I don't wanna pay more, I don't wanna pay less, food people may come in, and so, but we always try to keep all of our fees pretty much comparable to Butler County's health departments and Hamilton City's health department.
And the only fees we're required, the food fees are the only ones we're required to do a cost analysis every year. The other programs, we don't have to do that every year, so, but.
Okay, any other conversations, questions? Well, thank you very much.
So, is the board okay with the fees, recommended fee adjustments?
It looks like because we have to look at our budget, right, and we're losing some
Yeah.
funds, and we haven't increased in over 25 years, and we're including
And
some of
those,
those funds, yeah.
And
Water.
get our costs back for
And
the
get our
water.
costs back for water. It seems like this is what we must do at this point, even though we might not want to. Is everybody thinking,
Yeah,
is
fine.
okay with that? Okay, all right. Thank you. Next item is a review of the vital statistic fees.
We put this in the packet just because we're talking about, health fees. Vital stat fees probably won't change around the county until next year. They're still waiting, but These are the surrounding areas, I think, Amanda put, yeah, Butler County and Hamilton City on here. They're thinking about, maybe I talked with, Hamilton City, they're thinking if they raise the fees, it's gonna be like $27, but they're not doing anything yet. And so we will wait and see. If Butler County and Hamilton City decides to change the fees, it would be a good idea for us to do it as well, because just to stay in line with our county partners or whatever, but, a lot of the security papers are increasing and cost is going up, so that's why a lot of the departments are talking about fees. And I think the new system, Amanda was telling me, the new system, as far as permit cost, is gonna be charged by the state, and they go up. You see the permits on the side is like $3 and $2, state's taking it up to $10.
Oh, wow.
So just FYI, it's just not us talking about increasing fees, and so. But, you don't have to do anything with this now, we probably wouldn't look at it until next year. But, just letting you guys be on the radar, if we change this, it'll have to come to the board, and we'll have to make a motion to approve it.
Any other questions or comments for the violence statistics? All right, hearing none, we will continue with the second quarter report for 2025. Just taking a look at that. Anybody want to present anything? No? Okay, yeah, just looking at it compared to last year as well, seems kind of pretty consistent. Any other comments or questions about the second quarter report? Okay, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda are our reports. So we'll begin with our Health Commissioner, Jackie Phillips-Carter.
Okay, I have the reports and the board, check it out and see if you guys like that summary of what my highlights are. I have nothing really to add to it other than the city council meeting about the filling systems in our process. That's in the packet. I wanted to make sure you guys are okay with that, and we will let you know as we go how that whole process pans out. And we had a PBO meeting, Pay and Benefit Ordinance meeting. Happens every year when every department goes with finance, legal, HR to see if you're gonna hire more people, want a new position, anything like that, want another range or whatever. We stayed exactly the same with my position next year. We requested, and I think I have to wait and see the budget, but we requested to the finance director to keep my salary in for the whole year so that our budget stays neutral, right? And when we ever decide what we're gonna do with the position or whatever. So I think we're good. I'll let you know what the budget, we have no numbers yet. They're supposed to be coming out, what is this, July? It should be coming out soon, August maybe at the latest, what that looks like, but, nothing changed. We should stay budget neutral or below our budget as far as the cost. And I think that's it. Oh, and then I won Middletown Rocks, thanks for all your support. Bruce was there rocking, Mayor was there rocking. Yeah, it was fun. I'm so glad it's over. Over.
That's the best night in Middletown, though.
It
really
is. If anybody has not spent one night there, everybody says that. We had newcomers this year, first timers, and they just were like, and then we have the ones that come every year, 3 times around, but they just have a blast, cause it's just a lot of fun. It's funny because people are making fools of themselves, but some people do have great talent.
Yeah.
So.
It was my first time going, and the next day I went to work and I was like, you guys, we have to like get a huge group together next year and go, because it was so much fun.
It is so much fun. And all the money goes to the kids,
Yeah.
like to CBI, so it's just, it's a win-win-win. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, so thank you for doing that.
Yep, and that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Comments or questions for the Health Commissioner? Nope, okay, we'll continue with our Medical Director, Dr. Genowine, please.
Reportable illnesses for June, we had 18 chlamydia, 12 gonorrhea, 3 hepatitis C, 2 hepatitis B, chronic hepatitis B, 2 varicella, 1 syphilis, 1 pertussis, 1 aseptic meningitis, 2 campylobacters, and 1 Candida auris.
Any,
That's all.
any comments or questions for the doctor? All right, thank you, doctor. Next is our Director of Nursing, Ms. Corbett.
So communicable disease wise, we had a first for me in my 25 years of public health. We had a hospitalized flu case at the end of June. It was an unvaccinated individual, but yeah. Flu is we typically don't see anything past about April, and that's late. But yeah, we had a flu hospitalized, it was a flu A. So that was new. The Campylobacters, not sure, this is a normal kind of time, for, GI, illnesses. So the Campylobacters, I had not had any luck contacting, but I did receive a voicemail over the weekend, so I'll be reaching back out. My big concern is where they got it. The concern is also whether or not they're related to an ongoing outbreak that's within Butler County related to unpasteurized dairy products. So hopefully I'll find out more information on those soon. As we mentioned already, the FEP funding has been decreased. We're being told by about 28%. We do not know what our funding is going to be exactly from Butler County. I keep getting updates, and that's still kind of being worked out. With the decrease in funding, they have decreased the number of deliverables that need to be done related to the funding amount, and those are going to be kind of flexible and need to be worked out a little bit more as well. So more to come on that. The health fair is coming right along. We are continuing to receive registrations for vendors. One vendor we will be having is Premier. They will be coming in doing free screenings for cholesterol, glucose, possibly the A1C as well, and blood pressure to anybody who is interested on that day. They'll be there for the full amount of time from 10 to 2. So if people don't know their numbers, they can come and get their numbers taken at our event. We are planning to have a table on nutritional information, how to make good healthy choices, planning on having a dental table to kind of make it fun for people to understand what good oral hygiene is about. Primary Health Solutions will be there promoting dental health as well. And the event center has taken over the responsibility of sponsorship recruitment. So if anybody is interested in sponsoring the event, Angela Smith at the event center is the person to contact. And I believe that is it for me.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we will continue, and Ms. Ely with the Environmental Health Director.
Okay, so for the month of June, we received 2 plan reviews, Iris Smoothie, which is a mobile, and Sheets gas station. We approved 2 plan reviews in Zone Sports Bar and the Atrium YMCA. They have a concession at the pool, so that was approved. And we were licensed in Zone Sports Bar, so we licensed 1 in the facility. Primo is now closed, so that was 1 facility closure for last month. The retail food establishment that we asked for voluntary closure, they reopened this month. Last month I came and they had mentioned that they had a mice infestation, so they cleaned everything up, stayed closed throughout the month, and they're now reopened. So we've also started our inspection, septic O&M inspections. So we're actually gonna continue that through the fall, probably through late summer, early fall. We are still continuing struggling through Acela, which is a new platform for our programmatic areas, all our programmatic areas. And we also, you didn't mention this, but we investigated what we thought.
Probably didn't want to.
Oh.
And we got 4 minutes left.
Okay, all right, I'm done.
Oh, you guys can
Okay.
continue. I just have to leave.
We did investigate a gastrointestinal illness outbreak this month. Cluster.
Cluster,
Sean, I
yeah.
don't know if you wanna mention that, but no, so.
No.
Okay.
But that's it, I'm done.
Any questions or comments? All All right, well, thank you very much. At this time, next item is the board member open discussion. Before I leave, I did wanna mention that anybody on the personnel committee, please stick around. We're gonna be signing the evaluation for our Ms. Phillips Carter, who did an excellent job.
We can pass that around now.
We can do it now? Okay, great.
Jeff is.
Well, you go ahead and sign. Jeff is on the.
Yeah,
oh,
she
whoops.
already
Yeah,
left.
yeah.
He just snuck out, I didn't see that. Okay, should have gotten him first.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you
Yeah,
sign
and I-
last.
yeah, I can do it, 'cause
Okay,
I'm gonna
so
be
pass
here.
it around, Emily. We'll have to wait for Jeff until the next time, I guess.
We can get
Yeah,
him.
well, he comes in,
Oh, yeah?
in and
Yeah,
out
we
too.
can- yeah, we can
He's
get
Oh,
just-
thank you.
yeah.
I was thinking, I'll leave that with you.
Okay, so did you already sign?
No.
You already
Yeah,
did.
I already signed it.
Okay, cool.
I do have.
I was trying to-
Okay, Ruth has something for open discussion, you
Walk
said?
with the dog.
Yay!
Yeah, is, July 19th. Our topic is menopause. So the men can still come to this talk. You might learn survival skills. So if you wanna take one.
Well,
pass it
men
on.
do get
We've
menopause.
got-
Won't the doctors talk about that?
We've got a physician from Tri-Health, who actually specializes in menopause. It is Balloon Fest week, yep, so, and we're doing this at Smith Park, so it's early in the morning, we might even get to see some balloons up in the air, so.
That would be cool.
Where should people meet at that time?
So we are meeting, across from the play area. I will have a yard sign up that says walk with the dog, so.
Across from the play area.
Yeah, when you go into
Walk
the
in,
park,
right to the-
it's right.
The spray pad. Smith
Yeah.
Park.
Oh, okay, where the,
Spray pad.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, so,
Yeah.
right when you drive in, to the right,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, very good.
That's all I had.
Okay, anything else for open discussion today? Anything anybody wants to say? Last chance, okay, thank you very much. And so at this time, we will adjourn at 8:28 a.m. The next board meeting is scheduled for August 12th, it's Tuesday, at 7:30 a.m. Thank you so much.
I'll try to.